At the end of the 1940s, Disney gave us a lean and lanky schoolmaster with feet that might have served for shovels, a crooner's voice, and a date with a headless legend. Then set him loose on Halloween night. But how did Walt Disney's animators turn Washington Irving's ghost story into one of the most stylish and terrifying cartoons in Disney history? All that and more, starting now. Hi, I'm Dennis, and this is West of Neverland. Classic Disney animation has always been one of my greatest passions, and this is where I get to share those stories with you. Today, we're diving into the second half of Disney's Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, the haunting tale of Ichabod Crane, adapted from Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. It's one of Disney's most atmospheric productions. Let's head back to 1949 and see how the studio conjured up a legend. As I've mentioned in other videos, the late 1940s were a difficult period for Walt Disney Productions. The studio was still recovering from World War II, both financially and creatively. Many animators had been drafted into the service or left during the 1941 strike, and overseas markets were cut off, leaving the company with limited revenue and a backlog of unfinished projects. Since Disney was in the practice of releasing both short, one-reel cartoons and full-length animated features, some of the stories they wanted to tell didn't quite fit within either of those constraints. They were either too long for a short or not quite substantial enough to stand on their own as a feature. Their solution became what is called the package films, collections of shorter segments bundled together in a single theatrical feature. It was a cost-saving measure for sure, but it also gave the studio creative outlet when the resources for a full-scale production weren't quite there. By the time The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad went into production, Disney had already released several of these anthology-style films, including Make Mine Music and Melody Time. Though he tried to be good, he never could behave. Both of which were spiritual descendants of Fantasia. Early on, this particular project, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, had a different working title. They initially called it Two Fabulous Characters. The idea was to bring together two literary heroes who couldn't be more different. Kenneth Grahame's cheerful and reckless Mr. Toad,
You'll never get me to give this up. Whee! Tally-ho!
and Washington Irving's nervous but endearing Ichabod Crane. But this combination wasn't particularly random. Mr. Toad reflected the warmth of the English countryside, while Sleepy Hollow explored something Disney had never fully tackled before, Gothic Americana. And as the project evolved, it became clear that Ichabod Crane's half of the story would push the studio's animators into new territory. The look and tone of Disney's version of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow owes a great deal to one of Disney's most imaginative artists, Mary Blair. Her concept art gave the short its distinctive color styling, autumn golds, deep blues, and eerie violet shadows that perfectly captured the mood of a crisp Halloween night. She truly set the tone for the terrifying finale. But before the animators could bring this terrifying tale to the screen, they had to solve one big challenge: how to animate Ichabod Crane himself. Washington Irving's original description of Ichabod is hardly flattering. Tall but exceedingly lank, with narrow shoulders, long arms and legs, hands that dangled a mile out of his sleeves, and his whole frame most loosely hung together. When my daughters were young, I read The Legend of Sleepy Hollow to them, and I loved seeing how closely Disney had followed Irving's original text. Several of the most memorable lines carry over almost verbatim into the film's narration, including feet that might have served for shovels.
Who's that coming down the street? Are they shovels or are they feet?
And a weathercock perched upon his spindle neck.
His head was small and flat on top with a long snipe nose, so that it looked like a weathercock perched upon his spindle neck.
And even one of them might have mistaken him for some scarecrow eloped from a cornfield.
One might well mistake him for some scarecrow eloped from a cornfield.
Translating that gawky, scarecrow-like figure into an appealing Disney character wasn't easy. As one anonymous note, often attributed to Milt Kahl, observed, "Looks like the guys are afraid to animate him. He's a tall, skinny guy. If the guys can't make a personality like this come across, we're limited to mice and bunnies." Story artist Joe Rinaldi tackled the challenge with a mix of humor and ingenuity, sketching out ways for Ichabod to sit, slouch, and sway in the most awkward yet expressive ways possible. His exaggerated postures became the heart of his personality, nervous, awkward, but somehow relatable. Adding to Ichabod's unique presence on the screen was the voice of the film, Bing Crosby, who by 1949 was one of the most recognizable entertainers in the world. And his involvement was intended to give this picture an immediate draw. Movie posters even promoted him with the line, "Hear Bing sing these new hit tunes." This was Bing Crosby's only film collaboration with the Disney studio, although he was caricatured in two shorts, Who Killed Cock Robin in 1935, and A Symposium of Popular Songs in 1962. While later on he would narrate some storybook records for Disney around 1970. The background singers were the Rhythmaires.
Ichabod, what a name.
Kind of odd.
But nice just the same.
The musical group that regularly performed with Bing Crosby on his radio shows and recordings. They can also be heard in Alice in Wonderland during the caucus race sequence with the Dodo Bird Sailor.
Never a beginning, there can never be a stop.
Additional voices and sounds were added by some studio regulars, including Pinto Colvig, who performed Ichabod's terrified scream, and Clarence Nash, who performed various animal noises, including Ichabod's horse. Billy Bletcher, the voice of Pegleg Pete,
Now look here, Pally. Come on.
and the Big Bad Wolf,
I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in.
performed the Headless Horseman's terrifying laugh. The music for the feature was composed by Oliver Wallace, the studio composer. Wallace also lent his own voice as Ichabod's nervous whistling while he tries to soothe his nerves on his spooky horse ride back home. Three songs were added to the production, written by two popular tunes composers of the day, Don Ray and Jean DePaul. Don Ray was best known for his songs written for the Andrews Sisters, including the swing tunes The House of Blue Lights,
Fall in there, and we'll see some sights at the house of blue lights.
and The Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy.
He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B.
Jean DePaul had composed music for movies and Broadway. His work also included the 1954 film Seven Brides for Seven Brothers.
Oh, yes, them women was sobbing, passing them nights.
Together, they contributed the songs Ichabod Crane,
Funny Pan, funny frame. Ichabod,
Ichabod Crane.
Katrina,
Once you have met that little coquette, Katrina.
and the Headless Horseman.
Ghosts are bad, but the one that's cursed is the Headless Horseman. He's the worst.
Songs that fuse narration, melody, and mood, guiding the viewer from lighthearted character moments into the terrifying ending. The story opens in the quiet valley of Sleepy Hollow, where Bing Crosby's smooth narration introduces us to the lanky new schoolmaster, Ichabod Crane.
Altogether, he was such an apparition as is seldom to be seen in broad daylight.
From the start, his odd proportions and unshakable confidence make him both admired and ridiculed by the townsfolk. Ichabod soon falls for the lovely Katrina Van Tassel, the coquettish daughter of the local landowner, although his affection is aimed just as much at her father's fortune as at her beauty. Ichabod's rival for Katrina's affections is Brom Bones, the leader of the Sleepy Hollow Boys. Everything builds to the Van Tassel's Halloween party where Brom Bones takes the upper hand by terrifying the superstitious Ichabod Crane by relating the legend of the Headless Horseman.
Hip, hip, and a clippity clop. She's out looking for a cotton chop.
On Ichabod's ride home, those warnings turn real. The chase that follows remains one of Disney's finest and most frightening set pieces. Driven by Oliver Wallace's relentless score, a masterclass in pacing, rhythm, and tone. By dawn, Ichabod had vanished. Some say he fled to another town to marry a widow, but others believed the horseman claimed him. Disney leaves us with an ambiguous conclusion, with a smashed pumpkin and his hat as the only clues. If you're enjoying this deep dive into Ichabod Crane, then click the like button and subscribe. I've got many more stories like this coming your way, so don't miss out. The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad was released on October 5th, 1949, just in time for the Halloween season. The October 1949 issue of Movieland magazine ran a number of promotions for the movie, including an ad and a comic retelling of Ichabod's story, along with a glowing review that said, Walt Disney's delightful animated version of The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad is exciting and different. You all know the tale of Sleepy Hollow. Well, it's enchanting and terrifying as narrated by Bing Crosby. Though we were frightened out of our wits by the Headless Horseman, we had some wonderful laughs at Ichabod, who has green eyes and a crooning larynx, just like the Groaner. The Old Groaner was a nickname given to Bing Crosby by the sentimental gentleman of swing, Tommy Dorsey, in reference to Bing's laid-back crooning style.
Just one more chance to prove it's you alone I care for.
Despite these warm reviews, though, the film's box office performance was disappointing for Disney. The darker tone of the Sleepy Hollow sequence even drew particular notice overseas. In the United Kingdom, the British Board of Film Censors issued an A certificate, A standing for adult, meaning the film required parental guidance. The Ichabod Crane segment of The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad has become a regular Disney staple ever since. On October 26, 1955, it aired in a Halloween episode of the Disneyland TV series, accompanied by an animated introduction about the life of Washington Irving.
So, before presenting our version of Sleepy Hollow, we'd like to take just a few minutes to tell the story of the author, Washington Irving.
While Ichabod and Mr. Toad didn't initially achieve the commercial success Disney hoped for, it found a lasting home over time. The Sleepy Hollow segment in particular has become a Halloween favorite on television and home video. Even in the parks, the Headless Horseman rides again. Each fall, a statue of the horseman appears in Disney California Adventure, a fitting tribute to one of animation's most enduring specters. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow segment of The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad remains one of Disney's most daring experiments. It proved that the studio could balance fear, laughter, and beauty, masterfully bringing one of America's most frightening tales to life. And if you enjoyed this trip through Disney's spookier side, I think you'll love my deep dive into the Skeleton Dance, the haunting short that started Disney's Silly Symphony series. Go ahead and click on it, and I'll see you real soon.